Hello, welcome everybody, and happy holidays to everyone across America and on our little YouTube channel here. I am Andrew Goldberg, one of the digital content programmers on Fox Sports, or for Fox Sports, I should say. I'm joined, as always, by Adam Levin and Michael Green. You can see Adam Levin live right there scratching his beard, while Michael Green, you just see a set photo because, I don't know, some kind of technical difficulties are going on for this computer. I know all of our fans are very sad not to see his Bradley Cooper-esque face. I know all our female fans will be sending us hate emails and tweets because, you know, if you want to tweet at us, you can tweet at us for me at agberg12, at Blue Collar God for Adam, and Michael Green doesn't actually have a Twitter, along with a picture of himself, but if you want to berate him on LinkedIn, go for it, because I'm sure he's very open to that as long as you also connect with him via LinkedIn. And usually we're joined by Zach Benau, but he's, and you can tweet at him at Zachary Benau, but he's traveling somewhere. I forget where he said in our text message, but he can't join us. He'll probably be with us next week. So guys, I mean, it was Christmas yesterday, and all of us being Jews, that means Chinese Day and Movie Day. So how was Chinese and Movie Day for you guys?
It was fantastic for me. I sat down and watched the interview on YouTube and ordered out, got some sweet and sour pork like a good Jew, and just chilled out and enjoyed the holidays. I appreciate the Bradley Cooper comment, by the way. I get
actually the first
celebrity. Bradley Cooper.
It was the first celebrity that came to my mind, so, you know, you're welcome.
Yeah, I also had a good Chinese and Movie Day. I ate a nice big helping of lo mein with a little bit of some catfish. Very, very, very not kosher, like the perfect Jew. Like I am a perfect Jew eating non-kosher stuff. You with the pork, Michael. Me with the catfish. And I watched a few little things here and there on Netflix. Some TV shows like The Arrested Development, the season they did for Netflix, which is way more disappointing than the one that was on Fox. And then some movies that I hadn't seen, like Snowpiercer and things like that. Just caught up with that, and then I watched a little NBA and went to the Clippers game at night with my dad. Kept it 100 with the basketball and movies in the Chinese food.
Kept it 100 with the father at a basketball game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched all the NBA games from the comforts of my home. I did not get Chinese food. I did not go to the movies. I did watch a lot of the Newsroom because I didn't see the third season of the Newsroom, so I'm on the last episode that I'll watch sometime later. And I did watch the interview like you, Michael. I mean, personally, I thought it was a poor version of Inglourious Bastards. I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it that much. My mom somehow did. And yes, I did watch it with my mom, so keeping it real, keeping it one nice. There.
It's the holidays. You should watch the interview with your mom.
Yeah. What do you think about it?
It's very patriotic of you guys to watch the interview. I thought it was like mediocre from the coming attractions, and even though I stand behind that movie being released, and we shouldn't cower to North Korea or terrorism in general, it's not going to make me see a movie that I thought looked mediocre, and it wasn't that good, was it, guys? Well, Andrew, you didn't like it, but
it had its moments, but it could have been better. I'd say probably on the same level as like a Pineapple Express.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna get to the NFL stuff in like whenever we finish this conversation. But Pineapple Express was actually funny. This was like had a couple moments of laughter, but the rest of it was just like, I don't know. I didn't even buy the movie because I was like, oh, pro-American. I just wanted to watch it because I thought it was gonna be hilarious, and it ended up kind of just being, I don't know, whatever. Like, yeah, it had some funny moments, but I don't know. I thought it'd be funnier.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just watch it for Seth Rogen and James Franco doing stupid stuff together, and just ignore the general concept of a plot.
Yeah, well, okay, I didn't think there was going to be a plot. I just thought there was, obviously those types of movies don't have plots, but I was thinking it was going to have, like, a lot more laughter in it. I also watched Anchorman 2 this weekend.
I
Good.
did too, actually. We were on the same movie schedule, I guess.
Oh, boy, Mike.
Wow.
We should have telephoned
We're just right on the same wavelength.
I watched a lot of movies on the plane back from Israel. Like I saw Her and a bunch of movies like that. Her, pretty good movie. Very weird, but pretty good.
Now, what
Joaquin
about
Phoenix
the
is a little
sequel?
too movie for my taste, though.
Now, what about the sequel, His?
His haven't
Yeah.
gotten around to it yet.
Okay.
Would have watched it yesterday, but I wanted to watch OKC San Antonio instead. By the way, how about Russell Westbrook? I know we do an NFL thing, but boy, that guy carried that team by himself in San Antonio. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, he is very, very good, and a lot of people like to knock on him for the 5% that he does poorly and he shoots too much. But
Right.
that guy plays his heart out, and he's definitely one of the best players in the league, for sure.
I agree. I completely agree. I love his game.
Yeah. But speaking of injuries, I guess, because Kevin Durant was out, a lot of interesting things as we get to the last season, or the last week of the NFL regular season here. It's gone by quickly, guys. I mean, we cover it for a living every day and every week for Fox Sports, but season has really flown by. I mean, I felt like it just started last week, and I think once all these games end, we're actually going to pine for a Jacksonville Jaguar Tennessee Titan Thursday night football game like we saw last week.
I mean, I don't. Speaking for Zach, I'm not sure if anybody will ever be pining for that, but it did go by fast. I agree with you on that point.
Yeah, it really did fly by. It felt like the first month of the season was all scandal, so it felt like the first month of the season was really October, not September. So, I agree. It felt like just yesterday. It felt like we were all anticipating the NFL. Now it's pretty much over.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. It seemed like the season kind of got like a month late start because Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson,
Right.
every single NFL player started to beat their wives or do something stupid. So besides that, I mean, going into Week 17 here, some playoff implications are coming into view with really the only thing to be decided in terms of a pure playoff spot in the NFC is the NFC South, which will see the Falcons and the Panthers face off to claim the worst division in football. And then the last wild card spot is up for grabs as four teams battle out for the last spot, being the Chargers, the Ravens, the Texans, and the Chiefs. There's a lot of tiebreakers here that I'm not going to get into really, but the Chargers and Ravens right now are 9-6. Texans and Chiefs are 8-7. So all of them obviously mathematically in it. The only things that could change in terms of other seeding for the playoff pictures is Steelers and Bengals, who play Sunday night. The winner is going to be the AFC North champ, if I'm correct. And then in the NFC, the top three seeds are still up in the air as Green Bay and Detroit, what could be the 2 seed. And the Seahawks and the Cowboys could flip-flop in the 1 and 2 seeds as well. It all depends on who wins this week going into Week 17. So, guys, I mean, you guys have the biggest playoff games. Michael, you have the NFC South. That's who you cover for Fox Sports. The Falcons versus the Panthers are obviously the headliner. The winner becomes the 4th seed and will host somebody. They could host the Cardinals. They could host the Seahawks. They could host actually, they couldn't host the Seahawks. But right now, they're hosting the Packers. And which would be incredible that a team that is either 11-5 or 12-4 is going to visit a team that is either 7-8-1 or 7-9. And then on the flip side of that, Adam, is that you cover the NFC North, and the Lions and the Packers are facing off for the division crown as well. So I'm going to pitch it to you guys and let you guys actually take it away in terms of the impact of both games and where those teams could finish in the postseason.
Mike, you wanna start with this for your division?
Yeah, we'll start in the South and work our way up. Um, so Andrew mentioned it seems like it took a while for the season to really get started. I think the NFC South is still waiting for the season to get started with how their teams have performed. But amazingly, you have a 6-9 team going against a 7-8-1 team to decide who's going to win the division, and it's going to be in Atlanta. We have both teams coming off of a win, and that this division's impossible to predict at this point. But you probably have the Panthers with the most momentum. Atlanta does play well in the Georgia Dome. I personally like their chances. Ironically, they may be the one team, even if they do make the playoffs, where their coach could be gone next season, regardless, out of everybody in the division. So that's kind of where it's at right now. I don't know if you want to talk about the North a little bit.
Yeah, I'll talk about the North in 1 second, but I just wanted to get your view on this. You like Atlanta. I can see why. They're good in the Georgia Dome. They have a good offense. I tend to think that maybe Carolina, defensively, they've started to look better the last few weeks, and also it seems like they're running the ball a little better, and Cam Newton's looking a little healthier. And call me crazy, but do you think that Carolina could possibly steal one in Atlanta? Because I kind of think they might, because I like their physicality and them in the trenches a little better than Atlanta. Although I like Atlanta's passing game obviously better, but I think Carolina could maybe steal one in the Georgia Dome. You think I'm crazy?
No, I wouldn't call you crazy. Like I said, this division is so hard to predict. I would say you have to keep in mind that Carolina's competition recently, their 3 wins have come against the Browns, the Bucks, and the Saints.
True.
It's not exactly a murderer's row of opponents, and I just think the Falcons they haven't won as many games, but they've been I think in my mind consistently more impressive. They kept it close against the Packers and the Steelers, 2 playoff teams. They beat the Cardinals, who are going to the playoffs. It looks like they're going to have Julio Jones playing, which is a big deal for them. And I think ultimately that home field advantage is what's going to put them over the edge, and the offense will carry them into the playoffs. And you mentioned good defense for the Panthers. The Falcons have played much better defense lately. Their last game against the Saints, holding them to just 14 points, is pretty impressive. And they got 5 sacks in that game, which was a season high.
True. One more thing before we go to me in the North. Who would have a better chance of being the 2010 Seattle Seahawks, that sub-500 division winner from a terrible division like they were in the awful 2010 NFC West, that beats that poor 11 or 12 win team that has to start on the road? Who would have a better chance of pulling a 2010 Seahawks, Falcons or Panthers?
I would say on a neutral field, I'd lean towards the Panthers. But again, because of the Georgia Dome advantage, I like the Falcons. And if they end up in a matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, a team that is really hurting right now offensively, I wouldn't think it's too far stretched to say they could pull off an upset and outscore them, just because I don't see the Cardinals generating too many points.
I agree. It's unfortunate because the Cardinals really, they've been brutalized by injury, and I agree with you on that. I think, Atlanta would be lucky to face the Cardinals because, Cardinals full strength, I would say Atlanta could lose, but, they're beaten up, and Atlanta can at least score. So I agree with you on that. Then we'll get to the NFC North. Very big game in that division. Lions and Packers have both clinched the playoffs, so win, lose, or draw, both of these teams are going to the playoffs no matter what. The reason this game is so important is because the loser has to start on the road in the playoffs on Saturday the 3rd or Sunday the 4th, whatever that may be, during the wild card weekend. And the winner gets a 2 seed, possibly a 1 seed if things break their way, but a top 2 seed, a bye, and most importantly, a home game in the divisional round. So that's a big, big, big deal. Packers are hosting this one. They lost in Detroit in Week 3, 19-7. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers had their worst offensive output until the Bills game, and still, even with the Bills, even with all this season completed, it was probably their second worst offensive output all year. Lions defense really hammered them. Lions defense has been very good all year. They've proven to be more than just a first quarter of the season aberration, which is why they entered a game in Lambeau probably with more confidence than ever, because they're actually bringing a defense that played well and made it and really harassed Aaron Rodgers, at least in Week 3. Very different in Lambeau. The Packers have a 23-game home winning streak against the Lions. Amazing considering that these are division rivals that play each other twice a year, and still the Lions haven't been able to get a win there since the end of the Gulf War in 1991 when the first Bush was president. Just an incredible streak. Aaron Rodgers also has the no interception streak in over 300 games or whatever it is. Not over 300 games, and over I think 2.5 years, 3 years, I don't know, but he's gone a few seasons without throwing an interception at home, so that's also going against the Lions. So I like the Lions to maybe keep this one close, but I still think the Packers might get the best of the Lions and extend their home winning streak against that team to 24 home wins, and they would get the first round bye over the Lions. The only way I could see the Lions upsetting the apple cart and being the 2 seed is if that defense limits Aaron Rodgers the way they did, and if Matt Stafford he's been okay, he's been workmanlike, and he hasn't turned the ball over as much as usual, but if he can be really dynamic and that Lions defense can do what they did in Week 3, then I like the Lions' chances in this game.
Well, what are the Lions saying? I mean, because you cover them, how much have they been talking about, I guess, or the media have been talking about the whole 23-game losing streak? Also, what do the Lions think in terms of their play translating from Week 3 to the end of the season? Because obviously both teams are clearly different. I mean, the Lions have been one of the best NFL teams in terms of records and their defense statistically over the entire year, but the Packers were basically written off after the first month and a couple weeks in the season. Then Aaron Rodgers says relax, and everything seems fine, and he plays his butt off and could arguably be the MVP of the league, depending on who you ask.
Well, in terms of the streak, the media and the players are very aware of it on both sides. I mean, it's been a constant theme, as it should be. I mean, that is a pretty, almost ridiculous streak. I mean, 23 straight. You think they get one, but no. So, yes, the players and the media are very aware of it, but the players are actually using it as something to be like streaks can be broken. They're embracing it because they're saying, hey, you know what? And they're saying some of the right things. I mean, in the last 5 years or something, a lot of those games have been actually pretty close. It's just that the Packers have been able to edge them out. So they're kind of embracing the fact that they've had chances to be almost there. Matt Stafford is the one quarterback, interestingly enough, in this streak that's going to have multiple chances to break the streak at Lambeau, because it's been a lot of, Dan Orlovsky's and guys who are,
right.
It's a lot of turnover, which I think most of that streak has to do with the fact that, in those 23 years, the Packers have been consistently good and the Lions are always terrible. So I think that the players recognize that. They recognize kind of where the streak comes from, and they think they have a pretty good chance, and all the kudos to them. They are two different teams. The Lions are playing a Packers offense that has really found itself, but the Packers have only scored under 20 points twice. That was to the Bills and to the Lions. So the Lions, like the Bills, have that pelt on their wall where they can be like, you know what? We're one of only two teams that held this offense under 20 points. So they still have a lot of confidence. And Green Bay, their media, and even Aaron Rodgers and their players, they have not looked at this as, oh, it's the Lions, we'll get our win. They've been very serious, which is also why I think the Packers might win, because they've actually been looking at this as like a playoff game, because they know that the Lions, they know this isn't the typical Lions. They know that even though the Lions have struggled to win some games and maybe a pretty soft 11-14, they know that the Lions at least bring a pretty good defense. So they're not letting that out of their minds. So I expect actually a very, very good game on Sunday. There's actually, like I was saying, recently, even though the Lions have continued to lose in Lambeau, a lot of the games in recent years have actually been pretty close, closer than they were in the mid-'90s during this year.
Right. So I know we touched on the NFC South title game earlier, but I want to go back to the NFC South because I think it's kind of interesting that if you think about it, it wouldn't be crazy if all 4 coaches were fired at the end of the season. I know the Bucks just got Lovie Smith this year, but they are 2-12, 2-13, whatever their record is. And the Saints have been terrible, absolutely disappointing this year. And there's been a lot of flack between Sean Payton and Rob Ryan on the sidelines, and it looks like Drew Brees has aged a bit more than everyone thought. And then also Ron Rivera, after having an incredible year last year, I mean, the Panthers really haven't been good. Their defense has taken a couple steps back from being a top 5 defense last year. And then, of course, the Falcons are, they had very high aspirations for the playoffs, but they could be 7-9. So, Mike, is there a possibility that all of them could be, potentially be going in different directions for their head coaching positions?
I think there is varying degrees of a possibility. As I touched on it before, I'd say ironically, one of the coaches in the best positions to get into the playoffs right now is the most likely to be fired out of that group, which is Mike Smith. I think Arthur Blank kind of made his mind up pretty early in the season, back when they were heading into their bye week at 2-6, that there was going to be a coaching change, and I'm not sure if anything short of a Super Bowl appearance could really change that at this point. I think Ron Rivera probably had a lot more to worry about before the Panthers went on their most recent 3-game winning streak. I think he probably saved his job with that, especially considering that they won the division last season. The Bucks and Saints will be interesting. I think it'll be really hard for the Bucks to stomach letting go of Lovie Smith after one season, even though it was a terrible season. I think he has probably one more year left to prove that he could get the team turned around. The defense has shown improvement, and his big excuse right now, which is pretty legitimate, is he had to go through the whole season without an offensive coordinator, and that's not really fair to judge his team based on that with everything that happened to Tedford. With the Saints, I'd say a lot of Sean Payton's assistants are probably going to be out next season, but I think that track record of success with Sean Payton probably buys him another year. Maybe not so much with Rob Ryan. He might end up having to take the fall for how poorly the defense played this season.
So it's one of these scapegoat things. All the assistants gets fired, the head coach gets one more shot, and they see what happens, especially because Brandon Cooks has been injured for the whole entire year, and they've had, Jimmy Graham's been banged up, he hasn't produced well, and there's been kind of a lot of injuries on the defensive side too, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of injuries all over the place, particularly on defense. I mean, losing Jairus Byrd at safety, that was a big free agent acquisition for them that they were counting on. They really have not been able to find a good second cornerback to complement Keenan Lewis. But, in general, there were pieces in place for them to perform a lot better than they did this season. Right. And I think, going into next year, Sean Payton's definitely going to be on the hot seat right off the bat because of that.
I got two quick questions for you, Mike, before we wrap up the NFC South. I think your points were well hit there. I don't think Tampa should should look to get past Lovie Smith until we can see another year out of him, maybe a different quarterback. But one thing on the Saints is my two-part thing here. Is there any talk about maybe looking to start finding the proper replacement for Drew Brees, because between his age and he had shoulder surgery a few years ago, and just watching him and the Saints play, he's looked a little off. Statistically, his stats are, his traditional stats look good. If you weren't watching the games, you'd be like, oh, he's not off, he looks fine. But when you watch the, stats can lie, especially the traditional stats. And he looked a bit off. I mean, is there any talk about how, pretty soon they might have to start looking for the guy to replace Drew Brees once his time is up there?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a conversation kind of floating around for the last few weeks now, ever since the Saints went on that initial 3-game home losing streak. I think that's when it really picked up momentum. But you're right, you look at Drew Brees' stats on the surface, I mean, it's hard to complain about 4,600 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, his quarterback ratings, 99.2. But at the same time, you watch the games, and it just doesn't look like the same Drew Brees, especially that last game against the Falcons. They just never seem to get on track offensively. The offensive line hasn't performed as well as it has in past seasons, so that could be a little bit to blame. But, I mean, you still have Jimmy Graham. Their rushing attack was actually the best it's been in a few years this season. So you have to start wondering if maybe it's time to at least get somebody waiting in the wings. I would say that's probably going to happen. If not in this upcoming draft, probably the next season after.
And then last thing before we finish with the NFC South, this is kind of a funny thing, but as I'm sure you know, covering the division, since its inception in 2002, there hasn't been one repeat champion. The only division since realignment in 02 that hasn't seen a repeat champion. Has there been talk about this? Because Carolina has a chance to be the first repeat champion in NFC South history. Has there been any talk about this division finally joining the other division, getting a team to win 2 straight titles?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the past, it's actually been a positive that there's been so much parity. Up until this season was because there was so much competition with the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers kind of trading blows and getting the top spot. I know for the Panthers, there's a lot of talk, even before the season started. It was a big deal trying to get that back-to-back division title for the first time. And, it didn't seem like it would be within reach all the way up until this week. And now that it's there, it's a pretty big deal. But obviously the Falcons are going to try to keep the streak going.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Adam, going to you, I mean, just talking about a coaching change, obviously, I would assume there's going to be one in Chicago. Is there any update on that? I mean, has it come to more finality there? And also in terms of what will happen with Jay Cutler and Jimmy Clausen, I mean, he didn't perform that great last weekend. He had like 2 touchdowns and like under 200 yards passing, which doesn't seem that great. But he led them to a win by default, I guess. I mean, what was the reaction there to the win? What's the reaction to what will happen after this game against the Vikings?
Well, he didn't lead them to a win. They were leading, and then the Lions stole their lunch money at the end of the year, which they've been doing, for the most part. But Clausen actually did take a lot of. He got a concussion in that game, and a lot of the players afterwards loved the fire that he brought to the team, which is, they said that same thing about Josh McCown, which basically tells you all you need to know about Jay Cutler, which is they think he's as apathetic as we do, because Clausen and McCown, who both really can't play, played pretty well in this offensive system, and the team, to a man, all the defensive and offensive players love their fire. That's something that both guys were talked about having. As far as Trestman, it's a done deal. I mean, the media is essentially predicting it. Phil Emery George McCaskey, the owner, and Phil Emery, the GM, have essentially, they haven't said it directly, but they've said it. Trestman's done. This will be his last. This will be his last game. They at least gave him, all 16 games, but he's a goner. For Jake Cutler, there were reports of him going to Tennessee. This was something that we didn't get to talk about last week when it was still fresh with his benching and everything. He's going to get to start in Minnesota because of Clausen's concussion, and David Fales is just not that good. But Jake Cutler's probably not going anywhere. Too much money to trade him, and we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of talk of getting a guy like a Rex Ryan, somebody who can be fiery, and like be the fiery guy in the locker room. Just let Jake Cutler be big arm Jake Cutler, and not have to be a leader as well, because they definitely had a board of leadership. And Trestman was a little too decent and a little too nice and treated his players like men. I don't think that's a bad thing. Apparently in the NFL, it's a bad thing. So yeah, he's a goner, unfortunately, because I think he actually had some pretty smart offense. Wonders for them last year. And then with the Vikings, this is actually a tale of two teams going in a different direction. The Vikings, I think the Vikings, and I've said it before, I think they're going to be primed for a really big year next year. Mike Zimmer's done a hell of a job with that team. Teddy Bridgewater has looked better and better. He has 4 straight games where he's completed 70% of his passes, and he's throwing, over 30 times. So he's gotten more and more accurate, better and better on the run, looked more and more like the type of quarterback we thought he might be, and looking more and more like that bad pro day was an aberration rather than, a sign of things to come. That defense plays hard and is really, really young. And I think the Vikings are going to hammer the Bears and have a lot of momentum going into next season. I think them, not the Bears, are going to challenge the Lions and the Packers in the NFC North. And I think that's going to be completed Sunday when they blow out the Bears. And also for them, they want to get their first win in division. They don't North a divisional win. And I think they can get it at home against the Bears team that's already done with next season. I mean, for my Bears newsletter, I'm already talking about the draft, so it's over there.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a link or a story kind of come out, or I thought that maybe the Bears would trade him to Tennessee because he has some playing days there, his days at Nashville, and obviously the Titans need a quarterback, and also Ken Wisenhunt's kind of a quarterback whisperer. I mean, if I was the Titans, I wouldn't do it, but I mean, I would assume that's a trade partner that's been discussed, like obviously in the rumor mill, but something that's been discussed.
It has been. It was discussed big time. I mean, I looked at our colleague Zach Benau's stuff that he did for the Titans, and it was a big theme of his thing. It was a big theme in the Chicago media, so I put stories about it in my Bears newsletter. But it started to lose a little steam because of the amount of money on the contract. And the fact that the Titans are probably actively tanking. I know we talk about tanking with the NBA, but I think the Titans are tanking. And I think they're tanking because they want to either try to get Mariota or they want to try to get Jameis Winston. And I think they'd rather – I don't know if they want to take the chance on Cutler anymore. And I don't know if the Bears want to do that because I think the Bears think that – the Bears know that Jay Cutler's not Mr. Firebrand. I mean, he's proven that. But I think they think that if he can just – gun balls down the field and not have to be a leader and can be just left alone and not tinkered with, and they can go out and get a Rex Ryan, like I said, or somebody that can be the rah-rah guy in press conferences, kind of like the team they're playing, the Vikings. I mean, Teddy is a very soft-spoken guy and just does his thing, even though I think he might be a better quarterback than Jay Cutler. He doesn't have the arm, but he doesn't turn the ball over as much. And Mike Zimmer's really been the rah-rah guy who's been the funny guy in the press conferences, been the guy that really tells the media, hey, lay off my guys and this and that, and just kind of and granted Teddy's a rookie, but kind of let Teddy be. And I think the Bears are probably looking at that model and wanting to go get a coach who can be what they hope Jay Cutler could be, but that Jay Cutler has proven not to be, which is a vocal leader. Jay Cutler just likes to go out there, gun the ball down the field, and be a gunslinger. And you know what? They probably think, whatever, we'll accept that. I mean, he gives us at least a shot to win. So I think the Titans talks are dead. But who knows? There's a whole offseason, right?
Yeah, and if you, I mean, if we want to transition to the AFC East, which is what I cover, I mean, I don't know if you want Rex Ryan in that spot for a Bears news conference where he's basically pulling jokes and taking shots at other teams in the division. Probably not the best idea, but I mean, he will have a fanfare there. I mean, once he is fired by the Jets, there's a source saying, I mean, it's not really a surprise here in New York, but there is a source saying that, Monday will be the day that him and John Idzik will both be fired from their positions, meaning they'll be basically back at square one after. Actually, I mean, a lot of people kind of bash Rex Ryan for being a bad coach. I think he's a very good coach, especially since he got a team to always play hard, and they were 8-8 last year. I think he would be a good head coach somewhere else where he just operates the defense and he has someone who's actually smart on offense operate the offense and he doesn't touch it. Because obviously we've seen that he cannot draft offensive talent or sign offensive talent or develop it, so let someone else do it and he just takes care of the defense because he does a phenomenal job with the defense. And obviously in Chicago he's going to have fanfare because his father, Buddy, produced the 46 defense that was so popular in Chicago.
Right.
And they take on the Dolphins. Dolphins are bringing everyone back. The only real note on the Dolphins is that, they're starting to move Deion Jordan, who wasn't very good last year in his rookie season after they traded up for him. Number 3 pick. He was essentially a bust for his rookie year, which is ridiculous to say, but that's what everyone was saying. And then he got suspended before the year even started. Now he's come back, and they're actually thinking about moving him to linebacker. He played well against the Vikings in their exciting win last week. GM Dennis Hickey's coming back. Joe Philbin's coming back. And then when Joe Philbin was actually asked about his assistants, he didn't address it. But you would think that they're going to be back. Maybe not Kevin Coyle, the defensive coordinator, especially with how the run defense is gone. But it will be interesting to see what happens there in the off season. They do have a lot of money still. So, like I said, it will be very interesting to see what happens in Miami next season. And they face off, maybe the Dolphins finish above 500 for the first time in a little bit because they would be 8-8 if they lost to the Jets. The Jets are just looking to send Rex Ryan off on a high note. And then in the only other game is the Bills-Patriots, and the Patriots have nothing to play for, even though they're going the whole Patriot way and they're saying all the right things, saying, this game matters. We need to be sharp going into the playoffs. We're not taking this team lightly. The Bills are really just looking to finish on a high note, finish 9-7. They're eliminated from the playoffs. Patriots have locked up the first round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And those are really the only headlines. I mean, the Bills, their offense is terrible. And in the offseason, they're going to have to address their quarterback situation because that seems like the only thing holding them back. And then in terms of Pro Bowls in my division, Patriots had 5, the Bills had 3. All of them were defensive linemen. The Jets had 1, which is Nick Mangold, Sheldon Richardson, and Muhammad Wilkerson made it as alternates. And Sheldon Richardson then said that Aaron Donald, who made it ahead of him, who was one of the guys who made it ahead of him, could not hold his jock strap. So that was interesting. And then the Dolphins, Brent Grimes and Cameron Wake both made it for the Dolphins. But other than that, I mean, like I said the whole season, it's the Patriots' division to win until they are not there in Week 17, the top of the standings. It's going to be their division every single year, and it just happened to be the same this year. And that's really it. I mean, we can go around the rest of the NFL because there aren't that many games really with playoff implications other than the 2 we discussed. And
quickly before we go to the rest of the NFL, because you're right about that, I just had one quick question. Staying in your division, just about the Dolphins. Do you think it's a good idea that they're going to keep Joe Philbin? I mean, he seems to be Mr. 8-8. Mike, maybe you can chime in with that. I mean, don't you think that? Do you think that Joe Philbin deserves to be back? I mean, I don't.
I mean, I was actually going to ask Andrew a similar question. To me, Joe Philbin just seems like kind of a perennial 8-8 type coach. I know that the Dolphins had a more successful season this year than expected, but at the same time, do they realistically think they're going to contend with the Patriots as long as Philbin's at the helm?
The thing is that's weird about Joe Philbin is, yeah, he's always been 8-8, but I guess you could have said that with Jason Garrett, and then all of a sudden they drafted an offensive lineman, and they're in the playoffs this year. So I think they're looking for a little continuity on their team. Obviously last year with the whole bullying scandal didn't help. They bring him back still this year, and they missed the playoffs yet again. But they're playing a little better. Their offense has actually improved in terms of the numbers under Bill Lazor for the first year. And I think also you have to look at it from this way. I mean, they have to keep continuity together. And if they fired Philbin, most likely Bill Lazor wouldn't come back. So therefore, Ryan Tannehill has to learn another offensive scheme, which would be, I think, his third in 4 years, because he had Sherman his first year. Then he had he had Joe Philbin last year, but he had Sherman for 2 years, then he had Lazor this year, and then there'd be another guy next year. So I think they're looking at it from that way, because I think from what they've seen, Ryan Tannehill has looked pretty good, and he's actually gradually played better since coming into the NFL. Every game he's played better and better, and you saw that last week when he had 4 touchdowns against the Vikings through the air. I think he can do it. I think it'll just be a question of shoring up the defense a little bit. And a lot of people are pointing to the running game, but the running game's fine. The offensive line has improved. Brendan Albert, you have to remember, has been out for the season, or out for, I would say, the last 4 or 5 games of the season. And when he was there, they had one of the better offensive lines in the league. Lamar Miller is a 1,000-yard rusher. Noshawn Moreno is hurt, so maybe they just don't bring him back next year, even though they just signed him this offseason. But they really don't need to address the offensive side of the ball. I think they just need to keep everyone together. And then defensively, they really need to shore up specifically the linebacking corps, even though Jelani Jenkins has played really well. But the other 2 spots might be up for debate. And they've gotten a lot of great rookie contributions across the board. So Dennis Hickey, in theory, has hit on basically every acquisition he made in the offseason. I would say it's the smartest move, maybe not the most popular in the fans' eyes, but usually the fans are wrong. So.
Well, with that said, it sounds like the Bills and the Dolphins are kind of heading into similar off seasons. Do you have an opinion on which team might be in better position to challenge the Patriots next year?
I would say the Dolphins, just because they have more across the board everywhere, and they're more sure of who their quarterback is going to be. Their quarterback play is much better than the Bills, and you can offset a lot of difficulties on the rest of your roster, like on defense, if you have Ryan Tannehill at the helm instead of Kyle Orton. Because the Bills have the number 4 ranked defense in the league. The defensive line is one of the best, if not the best, in the league. Maybe second to the Lions, as Adam would know. And, they got some good players around on offense. They have Sammy Watkins, who looks like the number 1 wide receiver. Robert Woods looks very solid as a number 2. And then Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller are great options in the backfield. And you don't need a number 1 back in order to win a Super Bowl in this league, as we've seen the past, 10 years. So if I was to pick somebody, I would have to go with the Dolphins. But the Bills are very intriguing just because of that defense and the fact that the Dolphins have a quarterback, the Bills don't. So, and 2015 crop of quarterbacks does not look good in terms of the Bills, to get somebody. Are they going to bring in Mark Sanchez? Probably not a good idea. Are they going to go back to E.J. Manuel, who they benched essentially for the entire season? I don't know. What's his confidence going to be? That's the tricky thing about bringing in Kyle Orton and benching him, having him take over for E.J. Manuel, because now you don't know what you have in E.J. Manuel essentially after a year and 4 games. You could say, at a certain point you know what you have, but I don't know. Maybe they should have just kind of gone. They saw it as an opportunity to challenge for the playoffs, but they're not even in it with Kyle Orton. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, to me it says a lot that even out of playoff contention, they're not going back to EJ Manuel to get him more experience at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but I mean that's about it in the AFC East. I mean there aren't. I mean looking at the rest of the slate, record-wise, there's a lot of very interesting games. But in terms of games that have playoff implications, I mean, I would say that the Chargers and Chiefs might be the most important game, other than the two we've already covered, in terms of the Lions Packers and the NFC South title game, and obviously the Bengals Steelers. So I
Well,
don't know if you guys want to go around first.
Houston, Jacksonville is interesting, as is Baltimore, Cleveland. I mean, Baltimore with a win and a San Diego loss is in. Houston with a win and a Baltimore loss and a San Diego loss is in. So I think that those are somewhat intriguing. I mean, I think Houston is going to pound Jacksonville into dust, even though they're offensively limited. I just think that Jacksonville, Jacksonville is a gritty team. They're a gutty team, but they turn the ball over a lot, and that's why they, continually get, embarrassed. So, but I think Houston needs too much help to get in. So I think they're going to win and get to 9-7, but that's about it. I think Baltimore is going to beat the Browns because they're better than the Browns, and they're better than who the Browns are going to trot out at quarterback, which is
Connor Shaw.
Connor Shaw. Yeah, exactly.
Quarterback legend, SEC lore.
And I know the Ravens secondary is bad, and they lost to Arian Foster and Case Keenum last week, but I think they'll hammer the Browns. But the Chiefs have a chance to make the playoffs if they beat San Diego and Baltimore and Houston loses. But I just think that with Alex Smith out with a lacerated spleen, Chase Daniels is nice, but I don't think that they're going to be able to beat San Diego. So I think San Diego wins that, gets that 6th seed. As for Pittsburgh-Cincinnati, which is the one big game we didn't touch on because we touched on the NFC South and NFC North title games. I think that the Steelers are gonna win this game, and I like the way the Bengals have looked recently, but I still don't trust Andy Dalton in big spots. And for whatever reason, the Steelers have the Bengals number. I mean, the Bengals have taken a couple from the Steelers and have even swept the Steelers, I think, twice in the last few seasons or something like that. So they've had some minimal success and at least split with the Steelers. But the Steelers always seem to be able to own them when the moment's big and they need to win a division. And I think that this Steelers offense has here's something crazy for you. Do you guys realize that the Steelers offense could potentially finish as the #1 total offense in the league if they hit a couple of statistical marks, and the Colts and some other teams kind of don't do anything dramatic in terms of scoring or yards gained, and the Steelers could finish with the #1 offense in the league. It'd be the first time since 1979, when they won their 4th Super Bowl title, that they'd finish as the #1 offense in the league after the season. And I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to be one of the scary teams heading down the stretch, only because their defense is horrid. So if they face any team that also has a good offense, I think they're done. But I think that Ben Roethlisberger in that offense is going to get it done against Cincinnati and then be a tough out in the playoffs. Mike, what about you, man? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you on the Steelers-Bengals game, Adam. I like the Steelers at home. I will not trust Andy Dalton until he makes it to a Super Bowl, basically, even though he's a fellow ginger. I can't get behind him.
I heard gingers have no soul. Is that true?
Only the ones who play for the Bengals. Common misconception with the rest of us. But yeah, I do. Coincidentally, the other offense that the Steelers are going up against is the Saints' offense, but that's just virtue of them playing catch up for most of the season. So I do think that I trust Roethlisberger. I think he'll get the job done at home. I also like the Chargers against the Chiefs, especially without Alex Smith playing. Maybe this is me being a homer, but I'm still interested in the Niners-Cardinals game. It has playoff seeding implications for the Cardinals. They've kind of been in a free fall with their quarterback situation, and it looks like Drew Stanton now isn't going to make it back for the playoffs. So be interesting to see how they come out and how the Niners play in Harbaugh's last game at home, and what kind of goodbye he gets. I'm personally pretty interested to see that.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of interesting tiebreakers in all these games. So let's go first to the Bengals Steelers, because if the Steelers win, obviously they win the division, but they would only win the division. And they'd only be the third seed. But if the Bengals win, they will clinch the AFC North, but they can also clinch a first-round bye if they win and Denver loses, or Cincinnati somehow inexplicably gets a tie, Denver loses, and then Indianapolis also loses. And then the Broncos could be a 3 seed. Well, they're still playing for a first-round bye, so they either get it with a win, a Cincinnati loss, or a Cincinnati tie and Indianapolis win. And then in terms of the NFC, the Lions could finish anywhere from a 1, 2, or 3 seed because, they win, they're the NFC North Division champ. Now they can get home field throughout. If they win, Seattle loses, and Arizona loses. They tie, Seattle loses, Arizona loses, Dallas loses. And they can clinch a first-round bye if they win, Detroit ties, Dallas loses, Detroit ties, Seattle loses, and Arizona loses. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on there, and the only other thing I have to say is, if we're looking at the 6th seed, the Ravens get in if they win and San Diego loses. Texans get in if they win, Baltimore and San Diego lose. And the Chiefs get in if they win and Baltimore and Houston lose. And then the Chargers get in if they win or Baltimore loses. So there are a lot of different playoff scenarios that could go on. And then in terms of the other, I guess the only other game is that winner of the Chargers-Chiefs game essentially keeps themselves open for the playoffs. The losers essentially eliminated. So it's like playing a playoff game in Week 17. That'll be, and it's a 1 o'clock game too. So, I mean, in the New York area, I don't have NFL, ticket and all that stuff. So hopefully they have to show the Jets-Dolphins because it's New York, but hopefully they can switch over to the Chargers-Chiefs because that'll be a better game. But in terms of looking at the rest of the NFL schedule, I mean, the Cowboys can become the first team to win every single road game since the Patriots did it, and the other 2 teams who have also went undefeated on the road and reached the Super Bowl. For the last 5 teams to go undefeated on the road, reach the Super Bowl with the 84 and 89 San Francisco 49ers winning the trophy. Adam, you had mentioned that the Steelers' offense is absolutely incredible right now. They've already surpassed single-season franchise marks. Ryan Tannehill, as much flack as he's kind of gotten for his up-and-down play, actually only needs 214 yards to become the only other Dolphins quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards. The only other one, of course, is Dan Marino. And there's some other crazy NFL stats I have here, but, there's a lot on the line this week in terms of playoff seeding, of course.
In terms of crazy stats, this is something I just found out doing the Bears newsletter a little bit before this, that Matt Forte, I believe, is 11 receptions away from having the most receptions in a single season of any running back ever, which would be, in a pretty sad season, he's been, pretty consistent and pretty good, and unfortunately he's not going to the Pro Bowl because people think like, he sucks, but actually he's been probably the best thing there on that offense. And then for the Lions, statistically, get this, if they hold Green Bay to under 13 yards rushing, they'll surpass the 2010 Steelers as, I think, the second best rushing defense since 2000. I think the 2000 Ravens would still be ahead of them, but they'd surpass, I believe, the 06 Vikings and 2010 Steelers is the stingiest rush defense since the turn of this century. So, yeah, like you said, a couple of cool statistical things on the line, but most NFL fans don't care about stats. So I guess we're talking to each other.
Unless fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
fantasy season's over now, though.
right. Matt Forte has 94 receptions this year. LT had 100. His third year in the league.
Yeah, well, LT, that was one of my favorite guys ever, and he's a bona fide Hall of Famer, which Forte can be too. And like LT, like Calvin Johnson, like even Andre Johnson on the Texans. You can have skill players that have standout careers, but if they don't have a quarterback with them, they can wallow in obscurity, compiling numbers without any titles, and it's not even their fault.
Adam, one question I was going to ask you, just because this is in your wheelhouse, assuming that the Seahawks do get home field, between the Lions and the Packers, do you favor one team as a better threat to challenge them in the playoffs on the road?
That's a very interesting question, and we're assuming that this is with Seattle being able to be at home, right? So,
right, assuming Seattle clinches home field.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Playoff-wise, I really like the Lions' DNA. I don't like the way that they can't run the ball, but I like the fact that they can play, that they play very, very good defense, and Matt Stafford has not been able to turn the ball over, and I think that coaching staff deserves a load of credit. I did a whole gallery. We do galleries at Fox, and did a whole gallery about 11 Lions to thank, and every member of the coaching staff was on there, even Joe Lombardi, because he's kept Matt Stafford's, the offensive coordinator, because he's kept his turnovers down. That said, I like the Packers better. I like the Packers better in Seattle. Here's why. They can score. Aaron Rodgers is protected. He can move the ball a little bit. I don't buy Seattle's offense at all. I think that Seattle, just like last year, they're not a great offensive team. Their defense is really good, and Russell Wilson makes good decisions when he needs to, but they're not going to kill you on offense. So I kind of feel like if any team, especially a team as explosive as the Packers, gets a 14 or even 21-point lead on them, I kind of think Seattle's done, because I don't trust Russell Wilson to get them all the way back until he proves that he can get them all the way back, because he plays a lot with leads or behind, maybe 7 points, not 21 points. And the Packers defensively, just to finish off the reason why I think the Packers could do well in Seattle, defensively, since the bye week, they've gotten out of the bottom 5 in terms of rushing defense. They're ranked 10th against the pass. In terms of advanced metrics, they're actually very, very good. They're in the top 15 for sacks, and that defense has quietly, since their bye week, gotten much, much better. And did you guys know that outside of the second half explosion by the Atlanta Falcons in your division, Mike, outside of that second half explosion by the Atlanta Falcons on that Monday night game, the Packers defense has held opposing offenses down, and that includes a Patriots offense that was scoring over 30 a game coming in that got held to just 21. So that Packers defense has not gotten a lot of credit and has gotten lambasted at the second half against Atlanta. But really, besides that, they've been very, very good at limiting explosive plays, and they might be the actual X factor in a Packers run, because since Week 12, their defensive efficiency is better than the Packers' offensive efficiency. I believe that. It's true. So I would like the Packers better, just because I don't trust the Lions scoring-wise. If the Lions could score like the Packers could, I trust the Lions more in Seattle, but they can't really score.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, if I'm unbiased looking at all three of those rosters on paper, I might rank the Seahawks third, actually, in terms of the talents on the roster. But, that home field advantage, the 12th man, everybody knows that counts for a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a great NFC North race because it's the last week. I don't know if I really buy the Lions yet, because they've gotten, which is ridiculous to say, I guess, to a degree, but they should have lost to the Dolphins, they should have lost to the Falcons, they should have lost to one other team. But I mean, hey, their defense is ranked number 1 for a reason, and I'll always trust a quarterback over a great defense any day. But it should be a great last week in the NFL season. Some interesting scenarios. I don't know about you guys, but that's all I got for today.
That's all I got.
You don't want to talk about the interview anymore?
I don't know. I just don't know what else to say. I mean, because you know how Inglourious Basterds was kind of like looking back and doing kind of like a little bit of a parody on World War II, and this one's modern day Inglourious Basterds, but we're not looking back on anything. It was like, but it just didn't achieve that kind of level. Like, Inglourious Basterds was an awesome movie. The review was like, I don't know, 50.
Yeah.
It is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I'll give it to you. It was not a good movie, but you know, for not having anything to do, Christmas Eve, as a Jewish person eating Chinese food on the couch, I mean, it was acceptable for passing the time by for me.
And
I
it
got
was 6 months.
I got one question for you guys before we hit the road. You reminded me of it, Andrew, with Inglourious Basterds, but what's your guys' favorite Tarantino flick ever? Mine is going to be the easy answer, Pulp Fiction. I like Inglourious Basterds. It's probably in my top 3 of movies he's done, but obviously my favorite is Pulp Fiction. Classic.
I'll let Andrew go first.
All right. Well, I'm terrible with movies, so I actually had to look this up. So I'm on Google right now. I saw some of Django Unchained, and I didn't see all of it. There are some very good flicks on here that I'm reminiscing about, but I guess I would have to say Inglourious Basterds, because that's the only one I've really, really seen. The whole Kill Bill trilogy was just whatever to me. And I've never seen Grindhouse or any of these other ones. So I've heard Pulp Fiction is like one of the best movies ever. I've just never seen it.
Gotta see it, man. It's a
good one. Pulp Fiction's up there for me. I like the shout out to UC Santa Cruz with Travolta wearing the T-shirt. To mix things up though, I'll go with Reservoir Dogs. I think that's a classic too. Yeah, that one always sticks out in my mind, especially when I hear that song play on the radio. I always play that scene in my mind, and it's always disturbing.
Andrew, I'll tell you this. I recommend, and Mike would probably agree, I recommend Pulp Fiction, True Romance, which he didn't direct, he wrote, Reservoir Dogs. Those are ones I recommend, and just like Inglourious Basterds, don't be squeamish about violence, because if you are, you're watching the wrong movies, because you know, almost.
I'm not nervous about that. I'm not squeamish about that.
There you go. Those are.
Well, for our ins and outs and awesome transitions, that's it for the Extra Point Podcast. I hope everybody had a happy holiday and enjoyed the last week of the regular season. You can tweet at us at AGBerg12, at Blue Collar God. Connect with Michael Green on LinkedIn or something. And you can tweet it at Zachary Benau too. Same thing, at Zachary Benau. For all of us here, have happy holidays, and I guess we'll see you after the new year, right? Because by the time we do this again, it'll be the new year.
Yeah, it will be.
2015.
See you guys in
first podcast of the year. All right, cool. Well, last podcast of the year, we did wonderful. You can see my dog in the background, by the way. She's cute. Have a good year, everybody.